Greetings and salutations to part 2 of an installment discussing institutionalized and weaponized sympathy. The first part will be linked in the low bar. Now, before I get stuck in here, I want to put it front and center that my intention is not to build a platform on the bodies of the dead. And in fact, I'm going to be pointing out how others use sympathy to do just that, to further their own interests. I don't profit from my videos. I have no Patreon. I'm not running for office. We're just chilling and bouncing ideas around. I'm going to do my best to tread lightly and respectfully, because no matter how it's being reported, the only victims of the Orlando shooting are the ones who were brutally terrorized, shot, killed or injured, and their families at Pulse nightclub on June 12, 2016 by Omar Mateen. They are the only victims. Not the NRA and gun owners, not Islam, not Christians, not even the LGBT community as a whole. The victims are the victims. And I'm not going to use this video to present a long rant on my own opinions on specific causes or farther-reaching implications of the shooting. Not that I don't have them. Anyone who reads my Twitter knows I have some fairly strong opinions about this. But that isn't the point of this video. We're talking about sympathy and the methods reporting will use to attempt to play on our emotions at the cost of the truth. And in the last video, I presented the idea that sympathy has become an institutionalized weapon to try to shape the social narrative, and I'm simply going to continue that here. So let's look at who the media is trying to tell us we should feel sorry for. You know, other than those people actually directly affected by the shooting. You know, the ones who are dead, or maimed, or grieving. Now, going into this, I know you're probably going to come to the end of it and go, wow, super boring. It's true. This is not a funny video. The topic matter is just too grave. And don't get me wrong, as much as I would love to read Sally Cohn like she's the Library of Alexandria, you know, old, dusty, dried up, and burned, I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to present an example of a neutral front, looking for facts, looking for objectivity. And I don't think I can illustrate that while doing the exact thing that I'm professing to be speaking out against. But welcome to why this shit doesn't sell. I'm not picking a side. I'm not saying these people are bad and you are good. I'm not making you feel good. I'm not fucking stroking you, am I? I'm not stroking myself either. Non-entertainment ho! For the purposes of this analysis, I'm looking for emotional language, emphasis on demographics, see also virtue signaling, and stuff like, but the real victims are... I'm not counting reasoned, rational fact, nor am I counting basic general empathy to those killed. I'm also not counting overt political partisanship, because that to me is completely disregardable on both sides. So, let's look at Breitbart. Right away, we see the word innocent refer to gays, which, while I don't disagree, it's emotional language, so my favorite faggot gets a point even though I love him. And then Owen Jones. He uses atrocity 3 times by my count in this article, and combined with his massive flounce from the set of Sky News, this much less fabulous faggot gets a point too. How about Jezebel? This article by Anna Merlin is remarkably balanced for Jezebel. That's my own bias. But there is the predictable link of him being a terrible person, in part because of a direct link to allegations of domestic violence against his ex-wife. Point for the ladies. Okay, HuffPo. Oh my. James Michael Nichols gets a point for LGBT and race. We got a twofer. The Young Turks? Well, Cenk anyway. Point for the gays. News.com.au. Ooh, hitting the think of the chillins angle pretty hard here, eh? Point for the women's. Reuters, as reported on Raw Story, gets a point for brown folks. And of course, I can't forget Christians. Oi. Alex Jones. Oh boy. Paul Joseph Watson, as a side note, can you please get your own space? Oh my gosh. But anyway, Ma America! I could go on and on and on doing this, but only so many hours in a day, yeah? Besides, this is something you can do yourself if you've got the time. See how the shooting is being reported across the media board. See, reading news media is like watching a magician. If you're just there to be entertained, go ahead. Focus on the birds and the scarves and the spirit fingers. But if you want to see what's going on behind the illusion, you cannot take your eyes off the other hand. And to close the loop, speaking of magic tricks, I also came across some videos about the Orlando shooting as part of some Illuminati sacrifice. Because internet. So let's tally her up. The gays have it! And that's not surprising. And I don't even think that angle is wrong, as homosexuality is a common marker of how these victims were targeted. But reaching too far outside this discrete situation has the potential to distract from addressing the problem as it is, and not as our political or emotional confirmation biases could inductively lead us to address them. Me? I'm a simple creature. Pretty basic. 1. The victims are the victims. 2. The assailant was an individual. We must acknowledge individualism. 3. What direct, imminent, and focused factors influenced this individual? That's it, really. You start with those and work your way out. It's not complicated. I sometimes feel like the kid in the Emperor's New Clothes. Know what I mean? So applying this template, 1. The victims were individuals attending a gay nightclub. 2. The assailant is an individual with ties to Islam who chose to target this particular nightclub with his particular set of skills and licenses granted by his training and profession during Ramadan. 3. The assailant has signs of schema outside the accepted rigors of appropriate Western behavior, as reported on by coworkers and subsequently investigated by the FBI. These signs include Islamic radicalization, possible domestic violence, possible mental illness, expression of desire to kill or injure others based on race and sexuality, and potentially suppressed homosexuality himself. And at this point, stop. This is the only information needed to address the situation right now. The more I read on the Orlando shooting, the further out from this basic profile the rhetoric becomes, and the more it begins to sound like this. Just noise and distraction and fighting over the carcass. But I've heard this barking before, about 20 years ago. Does Gamil Garbi ring any bells for anyone? Okay, I'll narrow it down. Does Gamil Garbi ring any bells for Canadians, at least? Fuck. Of course not. He changed his name to Marc Lépine 10 years before he went on a shooting spree in École Polytechnique and killed 14 women. According to his own suicide note, Lépine targeted them specifically because of feminism, and the Montreal massacre is widely held as a textbook example of a hate crime targeting women. I don't disagree. But it's been eerie for me, watching the reporting on Omar Mateen and how similar it is to the reporting on Lépine I read so long ago. Both of them came from families influenced by Islamic culture, Domestic violence played a factor with both of them, though in Lépin's case it was his father who beat his mother, as she testified to in court. Both have been speculated to have serious untreated mental illness. Both acquired their firearms legally. Both were reported to show signs of violence and aggression at their workplaces. Both of them targeted a specific demographic rather than a random crowd. And in both, any connection to Islamic influence is being actively downplayed. Why? If Islam is not the problem, if there is nothing at all, I mean nothing at all, that could reasonably be connected with this mass violence, there should be no issue with examining the possibility openly and critically, right? But right now, we can't even ask these questions, and we couldn't back then either. And if we cannot ask the questions, in this case, is there something about these killers' environment and upbringing that has contributed to these tragic results? We will never have a means to mitigate or prevent this from happening in the future. We have to be able to use all of the puzzle pieces, even the ones that are ugly or unflattering. And in these cases, I personally believe that the Islamic piece is far greater in Omar Mateen than it was in Mark Lépin. But I can't know that if I can't even ask these questions, if it's not even being investigated. And all of this media jockeying will just begin again at the next body count. Rinse, repeat. We have to shut the door on this barking. No matter how well-intentioned it may seem, we have to get back to first principles, the arbitrary, the objective. We have to maintain the freedom to choose when and how we care, instead of being forced to care when it's convenient or conducive to a third-party interest. We have to have the freedom to put sympathy aside in order to find the truth. Because when we allow others to be able to take concrete action against us for not feeling the right way to the right degree, when we allow ourselves to be silenced because we're not using the right language, we can't have the kind of conversations we need to have to try and prevent these deaths in the future. These are the conversations we need to have. Thank you for listening.